Okay, welcome back. We're on page 114 talking about secondary storage devices. And magnetic is very popular, either a tape with magnetic particles or a spinning disc with magnetic particles. Okay, that's kind of simple. Although those things are, hard drives, you're familiar with all that stuff. We do need to talk about RAID. So on page 117, basically, RAID has two different definitions. It used to be a redundant array of inexpensive disks. That's what the definition was. And then they said, well, it doesn't matter if they're inexpensive or not. So now it's a redundant array of independent disks. And the idea is if I had a computer case that could physically handle, I could put 4 hard drives in there and using some magic kind of bolt them together, so to speak, so these 4 hard drives look like one giant hard drive. Okay, that's the idea. And I'm not going to go into the details of it, but I will tell you that you can configure these 4 drives to either make your machine very, very safe. That's one technique, where if one of the hard drives failed, it'd be okay because there would be enough information on the remaining 3 that it could continue to operate and you wouldn't lose any data whatsoever. So it could be made to be safe. It's called redundancy. Or it could be made to be very, very fast. So sometimes you put a RAID because you want speed. Sometimes you do a RAID because you want redundancy. And if you have enough hard drives, you can have both. You can have redundancy and speed. Okay, so the whole point of a RAID is I got a bunch of hard drives together. So, for example, if you run across a storage vault that's got 18 terabytes of data, you can pretty much be guaranteed there's not one 18 terabyte hard drive in there. Okay, probably not. There's probably like 6 3 terabyte drives or something. Okay, because if it's that, you just can't get a disk that big. So it's guaranteed to be a RAID. All right, let's continue. Optical. Oh, come on. Everyone knows what a compact disk is. That's kind of dumb. Solid state. This is the new stuff. I bought a laptop just, not too long ago. And I had a choice between did I want a solid state disk or a machine that actually had an honest-to-God miniature hard drive. And I told him, no, I want the flash drive. I want the solid state disk because they are much, much faster. Remember we talked about the whole concept of direct access, and so on a traditional hard drive, even though it's relatively fast to move from one area to another, the little arm physically moves. In a solid state disk, there's no moving parts whatsoever. So for laptops and tablets, they're fantastic because there's no moving parts. If I drop my tablet, it's not going to do any damage. If you have little spinning discs, then yeah, dropping them could be bad. So solid state drives are physically faster, woohoo, and have no moving parts, which make them they don't consume they consume less electricity. They don't make any noise, no vibration, no moving parts, and are a heck of a lot more resilient to lots of other things, dropping them and stuff. Okay, so solid state drives are really good. And of course, they're more costly than traditional drives, so I paid a premium when I said, yes, I want a solid state drive. Okay, let's continue. Now here's something it's a little confusing, so I want you to take a deep breath and take lots of good notes. Okay, when you get to the enterprise, typically you're going to be putting things in some sort of a RAID scenario I just gave you. Well, there's basically 2 different options for having a bunch of disks made available for a business environment. And one of them is called Network Attached Storage, NAS. And so a NAS box, basically like this box has a capacity of 4 drives, okay? So I buy this box, I open it up, and I put 4 hard drives in it. And if they're a terabyte apiece, okay, so I put 4 1 terabyte drives in it. close it up, and then I have 4 terabytes of data that's available. Okay. Network attached storage. This guy basically just has an Ethernet cable sticking out the back. And so I just plug my network cord. Almost all corporate environments are not wireless. Okay, so they have a physical cable that plugs into their computers. And so this is just another one of those things. And this thing's tiny. It's about this big, right? So you just have a network cord and you plug it into the back of this guy. And so then, using some stuff that all the computers know how to do, using a file share technique, I can get to the files on this machine. It's perfect. I have one at home because I have tons and tons of videos that I do. You really think so? Yeah, I have a lot of videos, and videos are very, very big. If I want to keep a couple years worth of videos, I'm going to run out of hard drive space in one heck of a hurry. So I have one of these. And so I fire this guy up, and I copy my videos over to that guy, and so my machine doesn't get overwhelmed with videos. Okay, got it. Now, that is one technique. The other technique is called a storage area network. Now, the storage area network is the same 3 letters, NAS, SAN. So SAN and NAS. It's just the same thing, just spun around, okay? Storage area network is a little different. What happens is I have a device, typically a server, and the server itself is connected to the network, but the server is connected to and the boxes look the same, by the way. If you saw one of these things, you wouldn't really be able to tell if it was a NAS box or a SAN box until you spun it around and saw what kind of connector was on the back, okay? If it was a network connector, it's network attached storage. Okay, so what happened here is I have some sort of a device, typically a server, and I have a very special, sometimes it's called fiber channel, a very special high-speed connector that goes between this server and this external box, I almost said NAS, my SAN box, okay? So the SAN box takes specialized hardware on both ends, specialized cable, which you probably don't have, and specialized card in your server, which you probably don't have at home. And so the SAN boxes are designed for a slightly different environment. If I'm a machine over here and I want to get to the files, I have to go through a server before I can get to my files. Unlike the NAS box, when I want to get to the files in the NAS box, I can just go directly to the NAS box. Nobody's in between. There's nothing in between my computer and the SAN in the NAS box. For a SAN, there's a machine between the two. Now you might think, well, if there's something in between, that's going to make it worse. Well, now here's where it gets a little complicated, and here's where you're going to have to take notes. All right. So the SAN box, because it's tightly bound to the server, it can actually do things a lot faster. This is kind of one of those weird scenarios where it's kind of hard to explain. So again, pay attention, take notes. If I have a very, very big file, now a big file could be like a giant database. So to think of, I have some files on my machine. I have files that are like 30 gigabytes, okay? A 30 gigabyte file. One file that's 30 gigabytes, okay. If you were to read that through a NAS, the NAS thing can only read the entire file. If you said, give me a chunk in the middle, it would say, I can't do that. It's back to that thing about direct access versus sequential. It's not exactly, but the analogies are very similar. If I said, this 30 gigabyte file, give me this tiny piece in the middle, the NAS box would say, well, here's the whole damn file over again. The SAN box would say, okay, here's a little chunk you need. So if your file sizes are small, well, then there's practically no difference in performance between a SAN and a NAS. However, if your file sizes are huge, and the two scenarios that I'm going to talk about is databases and virtual machines. Okay, a virtual machine is I have an entire computer hard drive stored as a single file. Okay, and those suckers can get huge, or it could be huge databases. Whatever the case, doesn't matter. Whenever the files get huge, you need to be using SAN versus a NAS. And the reason I tell you this story is I work at an organization that didn't understand this. And so they said, we're going to buy a SAN box. And I went, great, I can migrate my database over to there. And so they said, great. And so they went off and did their thing, and they came back, and they said, okay, we've got it installed, we're ready to run it. And so I connected to it, and I went, wait a minute, this looks like a NAS box. They said, yeah. I said, well, no, you said you were buying a SAN box. They said, well, we did. I said, so which is it? Is it a network attached, or is it a storage area network? It was like, what's the difference? Well, what the problem is I couldn't migrate my database to it. If I was to move my database to this thing, the performance would have just plummeted. They didn't know what the heck they were talking about, and they got a salesman come in there and sold them a bill of goods, and so they ended up with something they couldn't use. So that's the point of this whole long-winded story. It took me 5 minutes to describe. All right, so let's continue, please. There's another thing out there called storage as a service. What that basically means is I don't want to have the storage at my location at all. I want to do like Dropbox. I'm sure everyone's heard of things like Dropbox or OneDrive or all these other kind of things where it's all done on the cloud. I physically don't know where it is. I just connect to my storage service, and I'll copy my files up there. And one of the cool things, of course, is you can have synchronization turned on. So when I go to my other computer, all those files just magically show up, which is great. And so you probably pay by like so many gigabytes or so many, per year for this service, or perhaps it's free because you bought something else. But Dropbox, Google Drive, these kinds of things, iCloud, those are all storage as a service examples. Now you might think about the mobile world has really made storage as a service a heck of a lot more prevalent than it used to be. And the idea is that if I'm on a tablet or any type of portable device, a phone, these things are small, and I'm not going to have an awful lot of data on there. And so why, for example, do I need to have all my data on all my devices? Why don't I just store it up in the cloud, and that way I don't have to clutter my machine? If I had 5 portable devices, I don't want to have the same file on all 5 of them. Just put it up in the cloud and be done with it. So yes, mobile has really made this a big thing. Okay, we're going to change subject and talk about input and output now. So obviously input is how you get stuff in the computer. So a lot of computer data, they talk about, some of it is human readable, like name, address, phone number, things like that you could store. But on the other hand, it could be that, a photograph or a database file is not human readable. If you actually looked at the data, you'd be looking at it going, what the heck is all this junk? So some data, of course, is human readable and some is not. They talk about data entry. And, we're going to be we're skipping a lot of the stuff in here because they go into weird detail about, all sorts of strange devices, which you already know about. But there's a concept here called source data automation. And this is important, as in ding, 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 ding. Perhaps this ought to be on a test, kind of important. Heck, it's close enough to the 15-minute mark. We'll just hang on to that thought, and we'll continue this in just a few.